Most people are waiting for a breaking news alert to tell them when to take action, but by then, the window to act has already been closed. We're currently living in a stagnant, fragile economy where systemic ripples in trade and energy are compressing into domestic instability. The goal of this video isn't to predict the collapse. It's to give you the actionable data that you need to stay 2 steps ahead of the curve. This is a 2026 Cascading Crisis Action Plan. It follows the easy-to-use OODA technique. This is the Urban Sentinel. Let's get into it. OODA stands for Observe, Orient, Decide, Act. It's simply a decision-making process that you can apply across many aspects of your life. Once you understand the basics, now in this video I'm going to apply it to the current events that are going on, or some of the current events that are going on, but in a manner that you can utilize to then navigate and negotiate your own situation within that environment. Now, these events are notated, they're reported things. You can look and find them individually going to the individual websites, news reports, things like that. And I've kind of compiled what I've gathered all together and put it into this. Observe. The supply chain is currently signaling dynamic stress. Maersk, a global shipping and logistics company, through the findings of the report by the National Retail Federation of Import Volume, reported a 14.3% surge in June of 2026 for import volumes as retailers front load their inventory, basically trying to buy more and get things shipped in ahead of time before the tariff hikes and the fuel volatility due to the Strait of Hormuz activity. That began a signaling that there's already a strain on the reactive supply chain. Simultaneously, the U.S. Headline inflation is holding at 14.25%, and the real actual average earnings, weekly earnings, have actually decreased, which many of us have seen that what we make for the hours that we work versus what it costs us to basically pay the bills and still survive. Now, the energy grid is also under similar duress. The Department of Energy Grid Resilience, their SPARK program, outlines a $1.9 billion SPARK, which is the Speed to Power Accelerated Reconducting Key. It's an initiative program that was put into place back in 2020. They estimate that the infrastructure for cooling costs have spiked 40% since 2020, and the DOE has signaled that a massive infrastructure upgrades are necessary, or the risk of annual power outages can increase 100 times by 2030. So basically everything that happens, especially in the heat waves that we've been starting to get, you're going to magnify that by 100 times by 2030. Now, meanwhile, the civil unrest risk has moved the United States, the U.S., into the 3rd highest risk country globally in direct comparison to Sudan and Iraq, according to the Verisk Maplecroft assessment. Now, this is citing specifically protest escalation times compressing, meaning the time it takes people to pretty much get upset and move to protesting being much, much smaller than what it used to be just a few years ago, where it would take months to almost years before they hit that peak protest point. And then once that compression happens, the property damage, as we see in many of these protests, are becoming more targeted towards symbolic structures, but also operational infrastructure under the present conditions. So there is, to greater extent, less simply burning cars and flipping over garbage cans and smashing storefronts, although that is still part of it, but more now towards targeting the businesses or the government facilities that they have the grievance with. Orient. Now, don't view these as individual isolated events. We're in a cascading environment. Basically, everything is falling down, just not at the same time, at the same speed. Now, the Thomson Reuters 2026 Global Trade Report detailed how the tariff volatility has fundamentally reshaped the trade into a strategic risk domain, with nearly 40% of companies absorbing costs to maintain market position over other competitors, but that's still leaving effectively 60% of those companies to cut services, supplies, and employees to maintain viability. So you think about it like this: supply chain directly affects the economic factors. So the tariff-driven volatility is forcing businesses to either raise prices or absorb costs, squeezing the manufacturing margins even tighter, and then hitting your wallet either as an expense as a consumer or hitting your wallet as an employee or former employee, depending upon the situation. On the economic end, that goes directly into the social aspect of that, where the underlying drivers of civil unrest, the things that build up to the point where people will no longer tolerate it, that economic volatility and the income inequality are amplified by the grievances that we see on social media, whether it's just people venting online or it's direct protest or actions taken against companies, or it's news events about activities and things that different companies or governments or government agencies were doing. It basically shows that it's not receding, it's not getting better, as we are all aware of that. And as we enter this sort of the bare minimum budget math that the U.S. needs to do to keep things going has become perilously dangerous, as we've seen with the consistent government shutdowns in order to kind of hedge the bet and keep things running a little bit longer. People dealing with large amounts of debt service versus people dealing with private investment gain, private investment equity, and of course then the public trust as an overall whole for the institutions that are responsible for that has continued to erode. Now, there is a high risk or a risk assessment company, Chelsea Brown International. They've been analyzing the shifting geography of risk as an overall whole, noting that civil unrest and geopolitical inflection points demand a shift from country level to calendar level. And what that means is, before you would hear things like travel warnings like, oh, don't go to this particular area or region of a country or country at all because it's in this sort of instability type of thing. And many countries kind of stay on that list. Now it's more keyed and pointed into specific things. If there are contested elections coming up, if there's been some major agricultural disaster, if there has been some social or government conflicts going on between the citizens and the government, or inter-office between government agencies and factions, that sort of thing, that can take what is effectively a safe country and put it onto that list, because that spark can pop up and light everything on fire like a big huge dumpster fire, just like that. And if you think about it, you want an example, you can look back 16 years to Greece when they were having their nationwide protests due to the austerity that was going on with the government. Basically, government taking the money, taking the taxes, not spending it properly, and leaving nothing for the people. And then you can even think back to just 9 months ago in Nepal with the Gen Z protests, where they basically, in the course of, in exaggeration, but in the course of 96 hours, they effectively had a revolution, a coup, and a civil war, all in that one time period, very quickly changing the entire dynamic of that country's government. And then even right now, present day, as it is in the UK, nationwide or UK-wide protests going out, citizens up in arms to the extent that they can be against government behavior, government funding, government policies. And it's those little ripples that start off small that you don't really pay attention to that get bigger fast and then become this tsunami of civil unrest that just starts wiping everything out just that quickly. Now, there is some wiggle room, as it were, for you to breathe in. The system is currently, as I said earlier, in a stagnant, fragile state. It's not a total collapse today or this week or at the end of the quarter. It's nothing like that. But the gap between when the official narratives are released to the public, that we see the numbers, we see the reports, and the actual systemic reality of finding out those new hidden utility fees, or that the supply chain documentations have shown that there is a clear pattern of delay that is increasing from start to finish along the lines. So your personal orientation really has to switch mentally from the normalcy of wait and see to a more defensive, almost administrative thing of hitting that refresh button on the screen, seeing when things are going to change, and then start moving and making your plans accordingly to keep updated with the new intel that comes in. Decide. Now, Your priority is not about fixing the system. That's not at all what this is about. It's about hardening your household against these fluctuations, the financial squeeze that many of us feel, and the potential, in some cases already visible, acts of service degradation that can occur when things get tight, both on the government level and down on the personal level. So you got to think of your liquidity threshold, as it were, the number of days that you can survive if your cash flow is interrupted by some type of economic shock or some localized service outage. What you have in your bank account, what you have, and if you have an investment portfolio, and what you have on hand. They're all three separate organisms. They each function on their own, but depending upon how you plan and what you move to do, you need to be able to coordinate and organize those so they become a fluid organism that works cohesively together. Now, managing that quickly and effectively, that means that, again, you have to start looking and thinking about the actions you need to take now so you don't miss that window when things actually become critical. So you have to determine first your go-stay threshold. Depending upon the situation, it may not necessarily be a physical condition of staying where you're at or leaving. It may be a financial situation. It may be an employment situation, an investment situation. It could very well be simply, do you spend that little extra money now to get those supplies or items or things that you know that you will need in the future, or do you wait it out and take care of the smaller things first so you have less on your plate to deal with later on? It's the matter of, you've got 3 credit cards. Do you pay off the smaller debt ones and deal with the big one now, or put all your money into the large one and then hope nothing else happens in that interim so you don't have to pull back out from those credit cards and acquire with more debt? If you've got investments, can you divest from whatever they're in, move them into something else without any penalty? Can you transfer or change your banking practices? Do you have anything in terms of outstanding loans that perhaps you can reorganize and reassess what you're paying for the interest? Things along those lines to help you out. Some cases we're already all doing that, or as best as we can, and other things are kind of locked in where you just have to deal with it the way that it is until you can find something better. Act. Final one. The 48-hour task that you will have, and it most likely will take you less time, but it's basically auditing your utility bills, your credit cards, any personal loans, your lease or your mortgage agreements, any add-on charges in any type of financing for credit cards, car payments, anything like that. Take a look at everything that you've got, and then look at the things that you could have some control over. Check your utility bill, and then check through the municipality and the state websites for Public Utility Commission, just to make sure that what the utility company is charging you, they're allowed to charge you, because as we all are aware, that a lot of times, unless they get called out on it, they're going to do those small little things that may seem inconsequential to them, but it makes a big difference to you as the consumer. So you start checking your bank statements for the same thing. Are there terms in a loan that you have that you can renegotiate? Can you transfer the remaining balance to some other form of payment that perhaps will cost you less in the short term to allow you to pay it off quicker? If you're renting, does your rental contract have an early out notification of, let's say, 120 days in case you do have to relocate, that you won't be penalized for packing up and leaving early because you did give them sufficient time within the lease agreement? These are small little things that you go through, and in some cases, you may not find anything. It may just be you're stuck with however it is, that's how it is. But if you can find those small little changes, those may be something that can help you save a few dollars here or give you a little bit of breathing room later on. Now, what you also should do is, and this is just a generalization, but secure your 3 most critical, non-negotiable household needs or supplies, whatever that may be, with a potential of either a supply chain issue or a financial issue. You don't want to be in a position where you're now part of the scurry and scramble group, running around hastily trying to either buy, order, or find and locate things that you normally would use that you absolutely do need. If you can't get prescriptions, if you can't get certain pieces of accessories or parts for medical equipment or some other things that are crucial for you or someone in your household, That's why you need to start preparing ahead of time. So this way you get them and you have them. Doesn't mean you have to have a whole warehouse full. It just means that if you know that you've got a CPAP device, or you've got some, dialysis device or anything along those lines, you want to have those prescriptions. Again, you want to be able to make sure that you've got an extra month, 2 months, depending upon what it is, laid out. Anything along those areas, plan out as best you can to make those purchases and get that in and get those secured. So this way, that's one less issue that you have to deal with later on. And of course, this data changes all the time, changes on a weekly basis. So there isn't a single step-by-step process really that you can go down a direct checklist for everything. You have to see the signals in your area. You have to notice the changes in your local grocery store. You have to see what new postings your town is putting up for the next hearing or public forum, what they're going to be changing for ordinances or implementing for some new type of service. You have to be able to keep on top of your state functions. What new laws are they passing or regulations are they amending? What private businesses on the large scale or the small scale? Even things when you start looking at retail companies, is that pharmacy moving just to another town because they're going to a bigger facility, or is the entire pharmaceutical branch shutting down or paring down, and now there's going to be fewer of them? You have to start tracking those tiny little things, because again, those little ripples are what become that tsunami wave later on that you weren't aware of, because it was just a small little one-off thing when you initially looked at it. But with that being said, these are the things that you need to look at and come back to the comments once you start finding these things, so we can all kind of get an idea of where things are going, because just like ripples out in water, they overlap and they intersect with each other. So something that may be inconsequential to you right now might be something that someone else is already experiencing, and maybe they can kind of give you a heads up. But that's all I got for you for now, and I'll catch you in the next one.